The summer of 2020 was an unusual one in London. Lockdown restrictions remained in place, the streets were unusually quiet, and public spaces were emptier than usual. For Clara Hayes, a respected social worker, and her sister, Melanie, a talented photographer, life felt isolating, so an invitation to a small picnic at Fleetwood Country Park on Clara's birthday offered a chance to live again, if only for a moment. Clara had planned a modest gathering with close friends and family. After all, it was her 45th birthday. On the evening of June 5th, Clara and Melanie set up a cozy spot on a hill in Fleetwood Park. They laid out blankets, some snacks, and a string of twinkling lights to create a warm glow as they welcomed guests. The sisters laughed, took pictures, and shared memories as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the landscape a deep black of purple and orange. The few guests had left by midnight, leaving Clara and Melanie to enjoy their last moments together. Clara was the calm one, the steadying force in her family. Melanie was the dreamer, a free spirit with an uncanny ability to capture the beauty of fleeting moments. When together, they were inseparable. But as the clock approached 1 a.m., the sisters were completely alone, their laughter fading into the quiet of the park. Little did they know that someone else was watching, lurking, waiting for their moment. Morning comes, and something is wrong. Clara and Melanie still haven't come home. For the sisters' mother, Elaine Hayes, it's unthinkable, her daughters would never disappear without a word. She begins calling friends and family, hoping that someone has heard from them. Meanwhile, Melanie's boyfriend, Paul, feels his dread grow with each unanswered call. By noon, Paul takes matters into his own hands. With Elaine and Clara's husband, Jack, he drives to Fleetwood Country Park, hoping to find them, praying that they've simply lost track of time. The park is eerily quiet, and every rustling leaf or shadow seems to carry a potential threat. The family searches the hill where Clara celebrated, but finds only the remains of the picnic. Blankets were scattered, fairy lights were dim, and a pair of Clara's designer sunglasses lay broken on the grass. Then, a grisly discovery. Just past the tree line, Paul spotted a knife. He panicked, and called Elaine and Jack over. Together they moved deeper into the bushes, their steps heavy with fear of what they might find. Clara and Melanie's bodies, entwined, their faces twisted in terror, their clothes torn. The scene was horrifying. Elaine's screams broke the silence, and as they called the police, the weight of what they had found began to sink in. Fleetwood Park was now a crime scene. The police moved in quickly, cordoning off the area, carefully recording every detail of the horrific discovery. This was not just a random attack, it was personal, calculated. The lead inspector, DCI Mark Tanner, knew they were dealing with a killer who was either unsettlingly methodical or completely insane. In the hours that followed, the forensic team combed the scene, collecting blood samples and any potential evidence. When Tanner learned that a pair of blue rubber gloves had been discarded near the bodies, his fears deepened. DNA testing would soon reveal that this was no isolated crime. The killer had left his own trail, as if daring the police to catch him. When the forensic results come in, one piece of evidence changes everything. DNA from the crime scene matches an unknown man. The killer isn't in any databases, but police suspect he's a local who knows the park's hidden paths. Surveillance footage shows a shadowy figure entering the park just before midnight, a figure that doesn't leave until after 3 a.m. Days turn into weeks, and the investigation turns into a ghost hunt. Inspector Tanner grows increasingly frustrated. Who would target two innocent women in such a brutal way? It doesn't make sense until they discover something creepy on Clara's phone. Amid the happy photos of the picnic is one final shot, time-stamped at 1:13 a.m. In it, Clara and Melanie look to the left, faces tense, as if someone has caught their attention. Had the killer approached them in those final moments, a dark figure gliding through the darkness, watching them from the edge of the park? That's when DCI Tanner decided to consult a psychologist. Dr. Lucy Rowe, a psychoanalyst with a gift for understanding twisted minds, examined the evidence. She concluded that this was a killer seeking control, one who found satisfaction in witnessing the terror of his victims. The gloves, the carefully concealed knife, all pointed to a mind driven by something much darker than random violence. But even as detectives and forensic experts examined the evidence, something else was going on behind the scenes. Melanie's close friends pushed for more media coverage, frustrated by the lack of public outrage. A series of articles picked up the story, and soon public attention was focused on Fleetwood Park and the unknown killer still at large. A week after the murder, a local man named Darren Case came forward. He had seen a figure walking near the entrance to the park around 11:30 p.m. on the night of the murder. Tall, dark-haired, and limping, the figure appeared restless, moving in and out of the shadows as if unsure whether to enter. Darren didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had seen the killer. The police following the trails and gathering any information they could about the dark-haired, limping stranger. They finally got a breakthrough when they identified a young man named Marcus Greer, a local resident with a history of violent outbursts. Neighbors described him as strange and paranoid, a man who rarely left his apartment except at night. They followed Greer for days, watching his every move. Then, in a twist that stunned even seasoned detectives, Greer turned up at Fleetwood Park one night, carrying a backpack and walking near the murder scene. He seemed to be reviewing the case, unable to resist the pull of what he had done. When the police finally approached him, Greer did not resist, he simply stared at them with vacant eyes. In his apartment, they found a trove of disturbing evidence, occult drawings, notebooks detailing violent fantasies, and a crudely drawn contract in which he promised to take human lives in exchange for power. He had scribbled strange references to ancient rituals, believing that killing would make him invincible. In custody, Greer remained strangely calm. When DCI Tanner questioned him, he responded with a grim smile, as if reliving the events that had occurred. "They looked so peaceful," he muttered. Tanner clenched his fists, but he restrained himself. This was a man out of touch with reality, one whose misguided beliefs had led him down a path of carnage. Greer admitted to approaching the sisters just after midnight, watching them laugh and dance. In his mind, they were the sacrifice he had chosen. The confession was cold, calculated, but incomplete. Greer refused to say where he had disposed of other evidence, leaving DCI Tanner and his team with the pieces to piece together. But with Greer's fingerprints on the knife, his DNA at the scene, and his confession, the case was clear. The trial was swift but traumatic. Elaine and Paul sat through every moment, their faces etched with pain as prosecutors detailed the horrifying final moments of Clara and Melanie's lives. The courtroom was silent as the judge sentenced Marcus Greer to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Outside the courthouse, Elaine spoke to reporters, her voice unwavering. Clara and Melanie were loved. They brought light into this world. And no darkness can take that away. The story of Clara and Melanie's lives will continue to resonate in their family and community. For DCI Tanner, it's another case closed, but the scars remain evidence of the darkness that lurks in the world, and a reminder of why he and his team fight to bring justice, even in the face of unspeakable evil. And for all of us, it's a reminder to hold on to those we love because we never know when the world's darkness may invade.